Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, keeping Prince George's County afloat amid several serious economic challenges. What's on tap for what was once the most educated and affluent Black community in the nation? We'll talk with the Vice Chair of the Prince George's County Council, Walla Begay, who says her county is still thriving and will survive the economic bumps in the road. Our council chair, thank you so much for talking with us about these really important issues.
Thank you so much. And don't take the most affluent away from us yet now. We compete and we said for Charles County, we contributed to that. Some of our residents went there and made it the what it is today. So it's all good.
Okay, well, I appreciate the fight. I appreciate that. Let me uh, talk about just where things are right now. Already in 2025, we've seen federal layoffs impacting county residents, the issue about the FBI moving to the county, the commanders possibly leaving Prince George's County, and now Six Flags closing by year's end. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's kind of talk about this Six Flags situation first. Were you caught off guard, or did you see this issue coming from Six Flags?
Never saw it coming. We Six Flags has been one that's been one of the better partners. Why this was so shocking. They usually work with us on all the issues. We meet with them a couple times a year. They meet with the community around us. There was no discussion of possible closing. Now, some people say something about the fights, and let me just say this: there's something about having that one big fight that gets covered by all the news, and then that becomes the everyday of Six Flags. There were not fights at Six Flags every day. And that's just the reality. It did happen, but there are fights everywhere. In fact, I would have been more concerned of a business that had fights and says, look, this is so bad for us. We could lose business if this continues. We've seen that with other places. This has not been the story with Six Flags. So there was no warning here. We got a call at 4 o'clock on Friday from a spokesperson letting us know that the corporate had decided that they were ready to sell the land, and that they were moving in a different direction, and that the land was worth a lot and it was worth selling. So obviously there was some issues that we could have resolved. They were not open to that, and they said that this came from the corporate of Six Flags, and it was a final decision.
Hmm. As we know, business is business, but do you believe that this decision was purely about making more money for Six Flags?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I do think that there are some internal business decisions that they've made that decided that instead of operating it, they thought the land was more valuable. We could sit here all day and go back and forth. They were not willing to openly tell me why. When I asked why information was not provided to me before, they said that there were rules of the SEC. They couldn't tell us things. So as at this point, I don't want to. I can't sit here and speculate on what I just don't know.
Hmm. Well, if Six Flags owns the land and they want to sell it.
Right.
Obviously, this is a much more complicated situation than just selling the house. This land is not zoned for residential, is it?
No, it's low residential. It actually has more of an agricultural zone, but what allows the amusement park is a special exception that has for amusement park and entertainment. And that's where we want to start. We want to, there's been crazy rumors that we've heard that it's going to be a bunch of apartments there. There would have to be a rezoning, and that would include the community for that to happen. Not that it's impossible, it could happen, but it would require some work at the park and planning with the community for that to happen. However, we do hear that the residents do not want a bunch of houses there. We get that. And because it's not zoned for that, we actually have opportunity to start with where we want to start is keeping it keeping the commercial tax base there. And that's really a big part of this because we have actually argued, and that was part of what our campaign on is that we needed to build the commercial tax base. And in a way, you see the county sometimes moving in a different direction of building more housing. Now, people said they're building more housing for the future commercial tax, but you have to take a leap of faith and move on commercial tax base. And that's what we're doing. The good thing I will say about where we are now is that there are a lot of people that have shown some interest in this property. So we've been getting people reaching out saying they want to talk, they have some ideas, and we're going to start meet with people in the next couple of weeks to see what ideas that they have. We do realize time is of essence, and meaning that if Six Flags is planning to sell by the end of the term, if that November, that gives us a short window period. And what we're trying to make sure is that we don't just sell this to someone that's not going to be a partner, that's probably going to rezone into something that residents will not want. And if they own the land, we have limited control of how we can control them. So instead, we much rather have a hand in hand a plan on how we move forward to make sure that this is not sold into the wrong hands. And that's what we're trying to make sure. So we're working on that. Now, to give Six Flags the credit, although I was very frustrated with giving such a last minute notice of such a grand decision that would have a lasting impact on my community. But they have brought all their people in to meet with us to start talking about what comes next and redevelopment of the land and all that. So they are showing that they do want to work with us on that, and we're going to take every opportunity to be a part of their decision making.
What would you like to see there if you had your druthers?
Another amusement park or something of entertainment that includes family. I mean, that was, I went there when it was Wild World when I was young. My parents took me there and I lived in DC at the time. So it does bring revenue to have an amusement park in the area that doesn't have another amusement park. The next amusement park, if we're looking at, the King's Dominion, or we're going over there into Eastern Maryland, but here we're the only ones in town. So we do want to see if we can get something along the lines of what was already there, something of a family entertainment center. And I will say this will fit with the plans of Downtown Largo. Downtown Largo, we're looking at the cultural center and the amphitheater that is going to be right down the street and already land allocated for that. So we rather that this will complement that. So I will say this. I know that residents are kind of saying, oh, the closure of both the Commanders and Six Flags is like a door shut. And I actually think that we could look at it in another way. It's a new chapter, a new opening of a new door. We just have to be careful in how we move through it, through the door. And that's the opportunity we have with the possible commanders. Although I would note that the commander's decision is not final yet, it has to be voted by the council. And there are some issues there. But if, let's just say we lose both, which we've already lost Six Flags, so we know what that is. This is an opportunity, a new story change that people can say we were there when this started, and look what the future brought. So we can do that, and we will do that. I mean, remember when the Commanders came in '97, that was during the time that you had the closure of the Cap Center and all of those things. So there was a new story told with that, and we're going to make a new story with this, and we just got to get it right.
Well, to that point, and you are right, there are some political headwinds for the DC Council coming up between now and July. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser wants the council to make a decision by the middle of July, and she only needs 7 votes to get that done. Let us assume that it happens. Same question as with Six
Mhm.
Flags. What would you like to see happen to Northwest Field?
Well, there is some plans there. That one, I do think that people foresaw that we might lose it. I will say that we did know people, even people we know in the governor's office, and I want to give the governor the credit. They met with the commanders twice a week for months,
Hmm.
offering them whatever they can to get them to stay. But it was clear that there was an interest by the owners to go back to the District of Columbia. And actually, they paid more going back to DC than they would have gotten staying here. So the reality is that we knew that there was writing on a wall for the commander. So what we they did is that the Blue Line Corridor sector plan is actually going right through the process now. And what we asked people to do, hopefully they would have met with Park and Planning, but Park and Planning has put some concepts together of mixed use with commercial in the Northwest Stadium area that they put out there. Has not been approved yet, but it is in the works, and there are people and stakeholders that are there. Hopefully the community was a part of that. But the good thing is that that one that would have had a lot of community input by the time it's approved.
Yeah, because also, and I'm old enough to remember the Landover Mall era
Hmm.
when I remember when it was built, telling my age. I
Hmm.
remember when it left. Um, and that area still remains empty. And
Well, that's temporary. They have a plan moving through the plaque and planning for that too. So there is going to be there's already something that's going to be going there.
what is going to go there for those who aren't familiar with uh, the plan, those who don't have their ears to the ground for these kinds of things?
Well, we are in the speculation that there was an interest in a data center going there, and there are some discussions there. So we don't know anything final yet, but that is definitely the owners are a private developer that had ideas of what they wanted. That has nothing to do with the county. The county cannot control the owners, the learners family that has the idea of what they wanted there.
Hmm. Before I go into that, um, I do want to, go back to the point that I was making. Yeah, something will go onto that the old Landover Mall site, but um, the Northwest Field site,
Mhm.
knowing that the Commanders, Josh Harris, the owner, he did talk last week about the MOU and
Mhm.
about the commitment that he and the Commanders organization has to not leave Northwest Stadium a ghost town. And without getting too much into the weeds of that, but I think if nothing else, I think the optics of that are
Mhm.
are disconcerting for a lot of people who have benefited, from the Commanders being there.
Yeah, I would say this. It is a too many blows at once. That is one thing I will say. And I think that I'm not so concerned about the development. Again, with the Northwest Center, we do have those that are owning of the commanders that are part of the redevelopment team as stakeholders. They've given their input with park and plan. And we do have some interest in the buying of that. Just like with the Six Flags, frankly, the day that we looked at the sale of when Six Flags was announced that they were basically leaving, I received many phone calls. The bigger issue that's going to hit us hard, that's going to impact all of this, is this attack on the federal workers. Because if we start to get into a recession and people see that there is a lack of foreclosures and things like that, it sends a message to any investors that don't do it because you're going to lose your money, and we don't want that to happen. So we really need to figure out how to stop the bleeding. And thank God for our Attorney General Anthony Brown, because that actually is a huge help for us by pausing these layoffs. It does keep people where we don't have the stories of mass layoffs where it's leading to mass foreclosures, which is what we're scared of. And that is when that hits, that's when we're in trouble. And
Mm.
actually, when people talk about, I have another big development in my district, Westphalia, which we're actually moving forward on Westphalia now, thank God. So that's starting to move forward. But with Westphalia, one of the things people didn't realize, the plans were moving until 2010 hit. And when 2008 to 2010 hit, after they had an approved plan, it was approved plan, they had interest, they had people they were talking to, boom, the recession happened. And when a
Hold
great
that point,
recession
council
happened,
member. Don't lose your train of thought. I just need to take a very, very short break and
okay.
remind our listeners that the original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about all things Prince George's County with County Council Vice Chair Walla Blagay. Before the break, Councilmember Blagay, you were talking about Westphalia. Please continue your point.
So when I was going back with Westphalia, I was just saying that the bigger concern we have with the loss of the Commanders and even the loss of Six Flags, it's not just that we're losing it, because there is interest that with Northwest Stadium. There are plans that they're putting together that people are interested in investing in the land and developing. Same with Six Flags. I'm meeting with people in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We have meetings every day with different people who are showing interest. However, what might hurt us big that we are watching is the layoff of the federal workers. And people realize in Westphalia in 2008, Westphalia was a process that started in the early 2000s. By the time they approved the plan in 2007, the developers who had bought the land were ready to start developing and actually started building some of those early homes that people see in Parkside and then eventually Westphalia Town Center. But what happened? Frankly, the Great Recession. Recession came and took a lot of the foreclosure crisis that became front and center of Prince George's County, had the highest foreclosure rates in the country. All of those things brought away a lot of people. A lot of people, all of a sudden, some of the housing they couldn't sell, that some of the people who owned the companies that were investing, developers, literally had one of the biggest ones was bought by a foreclosure, bought by Wells Fargo. So that's what happened, and that's what slowed everything down in Westphalia, because once the recession happened, a lot of people fled, and a lot of folks did not want to develop, and all of a sudden the housing there that was initially built got slowed. Everything slowed, and it slowed for another 10 years.
Mhm.
So now we're moving forward. Now that the owner that now owns the Westphalia Town Center, which is the retail section. We're going to Vegas together. And I want to talk about Vegas. We're going to ICSC. And ICSC, people don't know, is an international shopping center convention. And it happens every year in Vegas. And you are able to meet with retailers, many of the big box retailers that you see in a lot of these in a lot of these shopping centers. They all go to these conventions looking for local places to go. So what we're gonna do, I'm meeting with the EDC tomorrow. We're getting a list together. I already have some meetings set up on Monday and Tuesday. I'm heading to Vegas on May 18th. And from that Monday and Tuesday, I got back-to-back meetings already scheduled in Vegas. So I am excited of what we're gonna be able to do. And I really am thinking this is opportunity. I hope people will be optimistic. We will be having meetings in the next couple weeks, probably in the next 2 months. The issue that I have now, I want to gather as much information as possible. I want to see, we're already putting together a plan of what can be done with this park amusement special exception that's on this land. We're already putting together, we have a team that's helping me setting up meetings. And then we're going to go to community, give an update of what's going to happen. We got to meet with Six Flags and see their whole team, their broker, all of their team that they want to work with. So this is opportunity, and I'm taking full advantage of it. And I know this is it's blows, but it's a blows that writes a new chapter, and we can write a new chapter.
Well, so as it relates to the trip to Las Vegas, and yes, certainly, I'm familiar with how municipalities kind of gather there and hope to bring business. It's another druthers conversation. Looks like this is the vice chair Walla Blagay. What are your druthers kind of conversation?
Yeah.
But what would you like? What would you like to see come out of those meetings at that conference in Vegas? What would you like to bring that you believe could have longevity?
Well, we really want to start with park and entertainment. It really is one of those things where we want to see what else we can get. We have some people reaching out to other operators of parks and amusement to see if they're interested. And I actually want to start with that first. The downside of this is that you don't know what people are going to offer and then what they're going to need in order to move forward. So I am kind of that's what's kind of has me like, okay, let's see what's happened. So that's really where I want to find. We really want to be able to have multiple operators that are in amusement park entertainment that can come and say, we're interested. So we have our choice. We get to pick. And that's where if I we walk away with that, that is going to be the ultimate. However, in the midst of all of this, and knockdown of federal workers, things like that, I do believe that might be some park operators might be a little concerned of whether they're going to be able to weather the storm in our area. And that does concern me. And we are working to try to figure out what ways we can actually show the diversity and background. Because here's the reality: the county has over 73,000 federal workers. That doesn't even include contractors. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who are owning contracting companies that are federal contractors that have heavily relied on federal money for revenue. So we are trying to also work with the incoming county executive, Aisha Braveboy, which we she should be in soon when she wins her general election. We're going to be working with her. But one of the things we're going to work with her team is showing a portfolio of who are the employers in the area so we can show that we're more diverse than people think. And we also need to make sure our people land jobs so we can show, like, hey, whoever's being laid off, they're landing a job. We're not talking about mass layoffs and foreclosures here. There's no need to worry. So that the ultimate is multiple park amusement operators. Now, if we have to look into other areas of entertainment, then we do have to slow it down and just really meet with the community to make sure that they're okay with those things coming. And then other options too require a little more work, but the one that would be smoother is finding something that's very similar to Six Flags.
Are you concerned about revisiting the kind of economic turmoil that we saw during the recession, during 2008, 2009, the foreclosures and all of that?
Yes, huge. That is a concern. That's the concern that we have. Without that, we will be okay. But with that lingering in the back, it is slowed. And I would tell people this. One of the reasons some people are like, oh, this is gonna be nothing but new townhomes. The reality is that new townhomes, the sale of homes in the area, and which is not just the county, the entire area is slowing. They're seeing that more houses that were before on a market, not even on the market for an hour, are sitting on the market longer. In addition, many people who are concerned about what's happening in the federal and might they lose their jobs. They're no longer upgrading their homes or selling their homes for bigger homes. Which so you even hear the realtors talking about that their business is slowing. We know a lot of realtors that actually over since the pandemic have been losing business. But we do see a spike in slowing of business for realtors in the last three to 6 months. So we really 3 months. So that's the concern we have is getting back to the time of recession. And that will be that's going to be difficult for us to be able to move any of these big projects.
You mentioned the data centers for the Landover Mall property. I mean, is that definitely a done deal, or is that still just something that is in the works?
In the works right now. But I will say that because we do know that that will possibly be a first site, we are starting the data center. Our chair Barrows, and I'm no longer vice chair anymore. Actually,
Oh,
Chris Councilwoman Oriada is the vice chair. But what I have worked with, Chair Barrows just put together a data center task force, and that is ahead of the fact that we have three possible sites. Landover is number one that we're going to see a data center, and we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. Now, some people will say they're concerns of data centers. I did a lot of research in this, which is why I'm on this committee. There are two things that I noticed. Number one, the actual approval of whether the data center turns on, I mean, we do know that the rates are increasing for the rates are increasing right now in for usage of power. That has to be done by PJM, which is a 14 state consortium. And we will say that PJM is going to make sure that we have enough power to turn it on. So meaning that we don't want them to turn the power on a data center and that it impacts now our residents. That's something we brought up. And we hear that we're talking to our state legislators about that. Know that we are on the same grid as the almost 300 data centers in Virginia. So
Okay.
that is impacting us. But the reality for the county, and this is where we have to just be one of those things where you're talking to residents, we need the money. The reality is that Virginia has lower taxes because they have 181 data centers in, I believe what county it brought in $600 million.
Is it Loudoun County?
Loudoun County, yep.
Mhm.
$600 million. I mean, it is that is I mean, we still have a $5.4 billion budget, but I will tell you, we just had to do an implementation of a telecommunication tax. Now, I did not vote on that, but the reality is that we needed that money to help us with the other money that we're losing because of income taxes are lower, some of the stuff. So we literally had to do the telecommunication tax, which is a $35 million increase. That's something that that if we had some data centers, we wouldn't have to do. So we
Um,
really are looking for ways to lift off the tax burden off of residents.
yeah, and first of all, thank you for the correction about your position on the council. I appreciate
Hmm.
that. And to your point, Council Chair Burrows, I spoke to him late last month,
Hmm.
and as you said, he is certainly pushing the data centers. Um, and as you said, this is about bringing more money into the county. But how do you balance that need with all of the concerns that we saw when residents in Northern Virginia gave so much pushback over that?
Well, yeah, we did actually learn some of the concerns that they had. I will say that this means ahead of the energy crisis. Now, the energy crisis in Northern Virginia is hitting all of us because we use the same grid. But the reality is that there has to be community benefit agreements for the community. We have to deal with the water issue. There's a noise issue that comes up that needs to be
Yes.
addressed. So all of this, that's why we're putting this together. We're going to have presentations from those in Northern Virginia to learn, basically see where the wins and the losses so that we don't have to make the same mistakes.
Hmm. Um, I want to talk also about President Trump's comments early in his new presidency about the FBI not coming to Greenbelt. I've covered it. You and your colleagues on the council, along with the governor and just about any other elected official in the state, fought for that, fought against the same powers that be in Virginia. Uh, how difficult was it for you to hear those comments that the president said that it wasn't going to happen?
Well, we did expect that it wouldn't happen under Trump. We were, I mean, our federal delegation did a good job preparing us for the worst. If Kamala won, what happens? If Trump wins, this is what happens. And we didn't know that this was going to be at risk with Trump winning the election. We also knew that Trump did not favor the FBI because that is definitely the agency that did an investigation on him, and that he was more likely going to keep it right in Washington, D.C. So we did expect that, and when he won, we already knew the bad news was coming. So, it is a grave disappointment. I would say it's still not over. We don't, who knows what happens when we have a new president in 2028, because we're going to revisit this issue right now. We are very gravely disappointed with what has with President Trump's decision, and frankly, it's like not only it's not. I mean, he's impacting our commercial tax base, but then he's going after our workers. It's not the easiest time, and that honestly is where we do have a real big concern of how this impacts the county fully in the future for our financial future.
Let's talk, if we can, for a bit about CTV,
Mhm.
um, and possibly, losing the community TV station. The interim county executive, Tara Jackson, proposed closing Prince George's Community TV. Um, do you think the county council will be able to keep it on? Where do you stand on that issue?
I'm fully supportive of CTV. I see the value of it. I had a show called Chat with the Lawyer. Many people don't realize that for 10 years I had a show Chat with the Lawyer that I used to have the show go on CTV, and a lot of people used to reach out to the lawyers to say, "Hey, I was on CTV watching this, and and I'm going through some difficult time, and bankruptcy might be an option," because I realized that people didn't know what their legal rights were and how their legal rights, that if they understood their rights, they could save themselves from the worst thing. One of the biggest things we saw was a lot of people who were going through possible foreclosure, and they would never use bankruptcy as an option. I would even say, we see that we have a president that's used it quite a few times. Well, it can really save you. From a difficult time. So I see the value of CTV and even the coverage that they've done on many of the community events that some of the major networks will not cover. CTV covers it. We're looking at less than $1 million and a $5 billion budget. I think we can work something out. We're going to start negotiating with the county, the executive and team in the next week. In fact, right now we're going through some other budget hearings that I'm missing right now, but we're going to be meeting with the county executive team and start to push for that. That's a small amount of money compared to other things, and I'm pretty sure I feel fairly confident that we're going to be able to save CTV. I had a 96-year-old woman in my community who is a community leader, and I mean, what is your excuse when you can say you're tired, but Miss White's never tired? And I called CTV. I said, look, she's having a 96th birthday. Can she be interviewed, or somebody could just give her that space to her 5 minute of fame? And Autumn Joy came and interviewed her, and it was huge, and it made her feel so special. And that's where you see CTV is digs into the community. So we definitely look forward to being able to see what we can do to save them. But like I said before, there's a big gap of negotiation between the council and the county executive right now, because a lot of cuts impact everyday services that we as the council members have to answer to, nobody else.
Well, let's talk about the budget. That the deficit
Right.
is, where is it, at 3 billion?
So the deficit, they talking about the state level. At the county level, we're talking about $200 million
200
deficit,
million,
almost
yes.
$200, so like
Hmm.
180. And so the Tara Jackson acting county executive, they sent a proposal that cut quite a bit. Now with their proposal, they did have some gains of the telecommunication tax, which we voted for. I didn't vote for it, but my colleagues did, and that provided them with the cushion that they needed. And I will say that we are concerned. If you just watched the news, you just saw that they just downgraded DC substantially, from
Yes, the
triple
bond
A
rating.
to right. Their bond rating went down substantially, and that is a concern for us. Our rating is coming up next month, and we are concerned that we're going to be downgraded in the light of all of the things going on with the federal government. That's why I said the biggest concern is the hit to the federal government. Now I do know that the Raiders were also concerned with the loss of the FBI, which does impact us. So we are a little teetering a little bit, waiting for this. But what we wanted to do is show a budget that is balanced and doesn't have us digging into our savings, our fund balance. So that's where
Where,
we are now.
where, and I know this is a very difficult question, but this is the reality. where do you make cuts that that, as we used to say growing up, that don't get to the white meat?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of cuts that got to the white meat. CTV is definitely needed. That's one of them. But there was even cuts and little reduction, cuts in grants. Grants are some of the ways that we provide support for our residents. I had to go this morning. I had a senior in my district that basically has no food and hasn't had their utilities off. They've had their utilities off since September of last year. It took our one of our grants, one of our nonprofits that we work with that is going to save them. So if we cut off the money for these grants, and we know at the federal level, I think what's even worse, the federal level, they're cutting so much
Right.
at the federal level that we're basically it's falling on us. A lot of these people are coming to us and saying, if you don't give us money, we won't survive. So this is a really difficult time because some of those people deserve the work that they do really helps us as a government. And
So
and
I'm
so
sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
we're so what we're trying to do at this point, we have a very tight budget that basically does not dig into the fund balance, and the fund balance really we'll see if we can get through without any downgrading this time. We hope no more bad news.
Yeah. And these things sound grim, and certainly Prince George's County isn't the only municipality
Right.
or governmental entity that is going through this. We are seeing this all across the state. We are seeing this all across the
Right.
DMV. Arguably, many places across the country are going through this. Um, and from your perspective, when it comes to the budget, you know, what's the silver lining from your perspective?
Right now, I would say this. I do think with the budget that we have and the budget that we're going to approve, we'll be okay. The question is what happens in 2027. And that's where that is really where we are very gravely concerned. One thing is by 2027, there will probably, if we have a downgrade, we're going to see less money, that's going to impact bonds and things like that. We're also, a lot of things are held up. Like I said, we are very grateful to the Attorney General for filing quite a bit of lawsuits to save us from having to deal with the final decision of some of Trump's decision. So some of the layoffs are being on hold because of pending federal cases. Some of the money that we might lose in for Medicaid and other programs are pending a lawsuit. So there's a lot of lawsuits that are literally pending that are holding off now. By 2027, there will be decisions on those, which will maybe in our favor or not in our favor, and that in itself will make it difficult because now we'll have to face the music on a lot of things that are not final yet.
Mm. You mentioned uh, County State's Attorney Aisha Brave Boy. Certainly, if she does win the general election, and this is not necessarily a prediction, but Prince George's is a
Hmm.
majority Democratic
Right.
county. Assuming that she does, what do you want to see from her that
Well,
will
mhm.
go ahead, please?
Well, just really having a partner. One thing I will say I've learned is that even if you have these ideas as a council member, if the county executive is going in a different direction, people usually find the county executive because the county executive has more resources to do things in the council. So because of that, we really need the county executive on board. When I was talking about Westphalia, one of the things is that it wasn't really prioritized, but then the county, Aisha showed up. She said, I'm going to prioritize this. She showed up to the meeting with the developers, and now they feel very confident that whatever we do, they have full support of the government. government. So we really are looking forward to a partner. When Six Flags happened, that was one of the first phone calls I've made. And when I talked to her, she says, we're going to try to find the entertainment park amusement that residents want to see. We just got to be diligent. And so having a partner like that, if I go, whoever I go to that we need to work out something so that we can bring us this to the county, she's going to be behind it. She's going to take over negotiations and try to get to seal the deal. And the good thing is that when she worked with the previous administrations, because people don't realize she had a whole life as a state delegate for 8 years, and before she worked
Mhm.
with the county executive,
I remember that.
she was actually there when they negotiated the deal for the National Harbor, when they negotiated the deal for Woodmore Town Center. She was there for all of that. So what we're trying to do is basically have a partner that's going to say, I'm here with you and I'm here to support you.
Mm. Uh, Final, just final thoughts about just kind of where, where the county is again from your perspective, on the county council. It is, as you say, kind of blows after blows after blows. But in the very beginning of this conversation, I said that, I appreciate the fight, and you are fighting to make sure that the county keeps its head above water. How do you do that?
I would say this: we've got to stay positive, and that's the message I've had for everyone. People are watching, and if we show that we're positive, that we are going through a difficult time, the county. This is not the first time that the county went through this difficult times. Look, in 2008, we were looking at foreclosures and furloughs and things like that. We're not there. There, we had prosperous years. So what I want people to understand is that it takes time, but we have to be positive. We cannot buy into any negative narrative of the county. People usually do that with the county. And look, I said, look, DC has a higher crime rate than we do. If they can keep business in their city, we can keep business in the county. So we just have to be diligent. And sometimes you lose something and you're gonna have to find a very creative way to get even something even better. So hey, the bounce back is gonna be serious, and we're gonna get back to where we were with economic development and even better.
Councilmember Walla Blagay, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your insight and your transparency, which is certainly refreshing. Thank you so very, very much. Please take care, and we will continue to watch and listen.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, May 6th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.